Harris County Public Defender, and I'm welcoming you to this presentation we're doing today about a new program we're starting. Acronym is FACT. It's a Future Appointed Counsel Training Program, and it's based on an idea I had. I've been a criminal defense lawyer a long time and a public defender a long time, and I started in Harris County about a little over 27 years ago. And at that time, there was no public defender. If you wanted to be a criminal defense lawyer and represent indigent people, you had to go down to the courthouse and ask for court appointments. And that wasn't an easy thing to do. It was very political. Certain judges wouldn't give you appointments. And over the years, that changed. I went in, basically had a retained practice, became a public defender. I've been a public defender pretty much most of the last 20 years. And I came back to Harris County after being a federal public defender in other places and realized, well, things had improved here a lot because now they had criteria for people to become assigned counsel. But the problem with the criteria is it makes it very hard for brand new lawyers to take these, or to even get into the system. And I taught law school, and law students would come to me and say, well, how do we do what you do? And I didn't know. There was no kind of entryway. So the idea I had after I developed the public defender's office here, since a lot of the cases will still be handled by appointed private lawyers, is to try to create a training program in which there would be a way to get from law school or a first year of practice to take assigned counsel cases. And I worked with a man named Scott Ehlers from our office, who you're going to hear in a minute, to develop a grant proposal that was accepted by the Department of Justice. And they provided funding so that we could create this program. And so what we hope to do is to create a program so that at the end of it, we'll be able to go to the judges in Harris County, and if you've completed that program, say, here's a person who's qualified, who's motivated, who wants to do this work, and we recommend that they get appointments under our guidance and under the guidance of a mentor. We're also going to have very experienced criminal defense lawyers overseeing individually the people in this program. So I'm going to bring up to the podium Scott Ehlers, who's going to talk a little bit about how we've designed the program, and then he's going to introduce another guest who's going to talk about a very specific part of the program, some of the hands-on training you're going to get. Scott?
Thanks, Alex. So, yeah, the Department of Justice has given the Harris County Public Defender's Office about $349,000 to train 2 different classes of 10 people this coming summer and the next summer. That's when the program will start. This summer, shortly after, like a couple of days after the bar is taken, for those of you who are taking the bar this summer, this 14-day boot camp will begin in Alabama, run by Gideon's Promise. I had the pleasure of going to see one of the classes at Gideon's Promise a couple of months ago, and I was blown away. This is probably the best criminal defense boot camp you could possibly attend in the country, particularly if you're interested in representing indigent clients. So we've grouped up with them. They're going to be doing all of the training. So there's a 14-day boot camp this summer. And then in the winter, there will be another 2-day follow-up over the weekend. And then the following summer, there will be another 2-day follow-up. All of that is paid through the grant in terms of all of that training, all the travel, all the lodging, etc. You know, nothing should have to come out of your pocket in terms of those first 3 trainings. There are 3 additional trainings after that. Once again, these are weekends, one in the summer, one in the winter. And the only thing that you have to pay for those trainings is just travel to get to Alabama. Beyond that, we are also going to have a 2-day training on Harris County courts, Texas law, etc. That's going to happen probably early September of this year. And then the final key component for the first year, there's going to be paid mentors that we will match you up with. So we're going to work with the Harris County Criminal Lawyers Association. Look for some of the best and brightest in terms of criminal defense lawyers here in town. We will be giving them a stipend to be working with you. So it won't just be a purely voluntary kind of thing. They will be getting paid for their time. Beyond that, April 1st is the deadline for the applications. I've put a number of applications back there, paper copies, though I would recommend going to our website at harriscountypublicdefender.org, where you will find an online PDF application. You can just fill it right in there. That'll make that nice and easy. I think that is, what's that? Introduce John, yes. So next up, John Rapping, who is the genius behind Gideon's Promise. He's going to...
Half of the genius.
Half the genius, excuse me. The other half, the better half is Illy, is it Askia?
Yes.
The better half will be coming up after John, and then we have a couple of folks who have gone through the Gideon's Promise program, and they can tell you a bit of how it's helped them out. So, John?
All right, how's everyone doing?
Great.
All right, so we are really excited to be partnering with the Harris County Public Defender's Office. We got a call from Alex and Scott not long ago. They knew about our training program, and they came up with this great idea to get federal money to pull Harris County into what we're doing and to help you improve the standard of representation in Harris County. And we were ecstatic. And what I want to do is tell you a little bit about why I think what we're doing is so important, and why if you get involved in this program, you're going to be doing more than just being a lawyer in Harris County. You're going to be joining a movement that is bigger than Harris County, bigger than Texas, bigger than the South. And so I want to tell you a little bit about the genesis of that movement. We're going to show you some video clips from an upcoming documentary about this movement we're building and that we hope you'll be a part of. And then Illy is going to tell you some of the specifics about how the program works. But really to help you understand what the Gideon's Promise piece is all about, I want to sort of go back to when I was a new lawyer, when I was sitting in your shoes. Right, I was right out of law school, and I was a public defender in Washington, D.C., and I remember getting my first case. Right, a young boy, 15 years old, he was accused of shooting and killing his best friend. He had been playing with a gun, and the gun accidentally went off, and his best friend died. And I remember meeting this young man. He was just 3 days shy of his 16th birthday, so he was in juvenile court. I was in juvenile court at the time. And I go back and I meet this young man, and he couldn't talk. He was just sort of comatose. He was comatose by the fact that he had a hand in killing his best friend. And it was really difficult to communicate with him, but over time we built a relationship. And we went to trial, I remember, and it was a bench trial with a judge. And by the time we went to trial, we had a very close relationship. This was my first trial. And we put on a case, and the judge, after the trial, came back and rendered his verdict, and he found this young man guilty of manslaughter. And in D.C. at the time, anyone convicted of a juvenile offense, whether it's possession of marijuana or murder, the maximum penalty is being locked up until you're 21 years old in a hellhole in D.C. called Oak Hill. This young man was found guilty of manslaughter. And I remember the feeling I had as they led this young man back to the lockup. And I walked out the front door. And I went back to my office, and I closed the door, turned out the lights. I literally sat in my chair and I cried. And I said to myself, you know what? I think I picked the wrong profession. This job is just too hard, right? It's too hard seeing terrible things happen to people you come to care about so deeply. I thought about quitting. But I didn't quit, obviously. And what really kept me going was a community of supportive public defenders, right, who were there to support me, who were there to remind me that I did all I could do, and that this young man, there's a value in the representation we gave him, even though things didn't go the way we wanted. So I hung in there. And 6 years later, I was a supervisor in the DC Public Defender Service. And I remember walking into my office, and there was a file on my desk. And the file said, there was a note on it that said Rap. And everyone calls me Rap, and you all should call me Rap, because if you come to Birmingham, you can say John, and I won't turn around, right? So it said Rap. Meet your new client. I opened up this file, and there was a police report that laid out the allegations against this man. And what I started to read, really to this day, was one of the most horrendous crimes I've been involved with to date. As I read, I learned that what this man was accused of doing was taking his van, a really unique-looking van, and driving it along Georgia Avenue, which is a main thoroughfare in Washington, D.C. And the allegation was that he would pick up prostitutes, take them to an alley, promise an exchange of sex for money, but rather than giving them money, he would very brutally sodomize them and injured, left them injured. Physically, emotionally, these women were all very injured. And I remember thinking to myself as I read through this police report, who could do such a thing? And at that point in my career, I represented people charged with murder and rape, but there was something about this. All of these victims who were so brutally assaulted, and I thought, who could do such a thing? But as I read on, I learned not only were the allegations horrific, the evidence was overwhelming. There was DNA from each of these women found in the van. There were fibers from the van and from my client's clothing found in the apartments where these women lived. All of these women identified my client, either through a photo array or a lineup. And they all identified this really unique-looking van. And then to top it off, my client made a statement when he was arrested. And while he never said he did these terrible crimes, what he did say was that he admitted driving that van in the relevant areas on the relevant dates. And as I got ready to go to the jail and visit this man, I thought to myself, is this going to be the first client I have in 6 years who I can't find some humanity? Because really, up until that day, I had represented many people charged with many crimes, and there was always something quintessentially human about the people that we represent. And I learned that through interviewing and working with the clients, and it's what kept me going. I even had a sign on my wall, so those late nights when I was working away at midnight, right, and trying to get motions done, and no one else was in the office, I needed some inspiration. I looked up these quotes on my wall, and one of them was by Sister Helen Brejon. And it said, "The dignity of the human spirit is that no person is as bad as the worst thing they've ever done." I sort of knew that. I've represented folks who've done bad things. I still thought when I go to the jail, is this guy going to be the first one? I can't click it. And I walked into jail, and I sat down across from this man, and to this date, I will say, that day I met one of the nicest, kindest people I've ever met. He was very concerned about each of these victims. He never asked what was going to happen to him. He was worried about his family, and he wanted to know if they would be okay. And then I met his family, and I saw where his kindness came from. He was surrounded by beautiful people. He had a mother who was lovely. He had a sister. He had 3 sisters who were just wonderful. He had a wife, and he had these 2 little children who just loved their dad so much. Right? And I knew this guy was surrounded by kind of people. I sort of understood that this work is complex. Good people can do bad things. And we went on getting ready for trial. And there was no plea offer that he was going to take. And so we ended up having to go to trial. He was 40 years old. The only plea offer was get out and locked up the rest of his life. So we went to trial. And I remember that trial lasted, it went on a week, 2 weeks. The jury went out. His family sat through that trial. And they were out for a day. They were out for 2 days, 3 days. I started getting hopeful. 4 days. And then the jury came back. And when the courtroom clerk read the jury's verdict, they said, "We find Mr. Jones guilty of each and every crime." And Mr. Jones was sentenced to 85 years for life. He was 40. He would literally never see the streets again. And I remember having that feeling I had back 6 years ago. But this job is just too hard. It's too hard representing people who come to care about so deeply. But I had to muster up the strength to go to the jail and visit Mr. Jones. And so I went to the jail that night. And I walked into the room and I said, "Mr. Jones, I am so sorry about what happened." He said, "Mr. Rathman, I want to thank you." I said, "Thank you? Maybe you don't understand what happened today, but things didn't go so well." He said, "No, you don't understand." He said, "I was born and raised in the District of Columbia. I went to DC public schools. I never had a teacher who cared about me. I was in the juvenile justice system. I never had a lawyer who cared about me. I was on parole for a drug charge when I met you. None of those lawyers ever cared about you, but you and your co-counsel and your investigator and your law clerks, you cared about me. You treated me like my case was important. You gave me the kind of representation that our Constitution says everyone's entitled to, but that we pay lip service to every day. And so for that, I thank you. But even more importantly, my family sat through that trial, and they are absolutely convinced that that jury got it wrong. And I could easily spend the rest of my life in prison if my mother and my sisters and my wife and my children don't think I had anything to do with this story. So thank you. And I went home that night, and I had an epiphany. I really did. That was sort of when I realized that success as a public defender is not about winning every case. We win a lot of cases, and they're good, and when we win, we should celebrate. But we lose a lot of cases too. That doesn't define success. Success, at that moment in my career, I defined it as being able to look in the mirror each and every day and saying you have given each and every client the kind of representation that our Constitution says you're entitled to. If you can do that every day, you're successful as a public defender. That was a standard I carried with me for the rest of my time at the U.S. at the DC Public Defense. And then I moved to Georgia. And I started working in Georgia. And after 2 years working in Georgia as a public defender, as a training director for their statewide public defender system, I went to New Orleans, and I worked with their office in the effort to rebuild that office in the wake of Hurricane Katrina. And I did some work in Alabama, and I did some work in Mississippi. And I came across young, passionate public defenders who, no matter how hard they work, would never be able to say they have given each and every client everything they deserve. They couldn't say it because they didn't have the resources. The caseloads were too overwhelming. They simply couldn't live up to that standard. I started meeting public defenders who came to accept a very low standard of what poor people deserve. The first time we did a training in Georgia on basic motions practice, 4th, 5th, 6th Amendment motions, the kind of motions lawyers file in every case. We finished, and one of the newly minted chief public defenders came up to me and said, "Man, Raph, that was a great training. I really liked that. But you know what? We can't do that where I come from." I said, "No, you can do this. This is the federal Constitution. It applies in Georgia. I assure you." He said, "No, we can't do that where I come from. Our judges get mad if we file motions." I learned about Carlos I, the 14-year-old boy in Union County, Mississippi, charged with robbery. He insisted he was innocent. He was held and given a court-appointed lawyer, and his court-appointed lawyer never came to visit him. Didn't file any motions, didn't do any investigation. 11 months later, that lawyer showed up on the eve of trial and said to Carlos Ivey, "I've got a plea for you. You will do 6 years, and if you don't take it, you're going to spend a long, long time in prison." And with nowhere to turn, Carlos Ivey took that. Well, his lawyer was wrong. He was sentenced to 25 years, 10 to serve. And unfortunately, that is the kind of representation that commonly happens in much of this country when court-appointed lawyers are assigned to represent people. Not because they come into this work for the wrong reasons, but because the system beats you down. And it can often tell you that if you want to succeed, you better help us process cases. Well, that led to the formation of Gideon's Promise. Right? Gideon's Promise is an organization that works with young public defenders and young assigned counsel, people who do indigent defense work all across the South. And the goal is not just to give you training so you can do better cross-examinations, although that will happen. It's not just to teach you the law, although that will happen. But it's also to give you a community and to inspire you to go into court every day and raise the standard of representation in your little neck of the woods. And collectively, if you're all doing that across the South, 40 years from now, our kids aren't going to know a system as broken as it is now. So that's what this is really all about. So not only, if you join this effort, not only will you be working with Scott and Alex and Sarah in Harris County to do this work, but you'll be working with folks like Genesis, who's going to say a few words to you, Kate, who's going to say a few words to you, lawyers who have come through our program and continue to be a part of the program. So I just wanted to say that to you. I think what you need to understand about this piece of the program is we understand that here with this, the way this is structured, you all will be private lawyers taking assigned cases. Okay, we get that. You may have a caseload that's not all court-appointed cases. But we really are looking for people who have a strong commitment to raising the standard of representation before you. And so when you apply, think of how you can help us understand that that is you through your essays and through your application. Because we're looking for people who are going to support the Cates and the Genesis and who are going to want to support the Cates and the Genesis. So what I want to say before I turn it over to Illy is this. We actually had the good fortune of a documentarian come down 4 years ago to start following our program. And she ended up making a movie about 3 of our lawyers. And it's going to air on HBO in July. It's called Gideon's Army. And the documentarian made us a short 7-minute piece that really, I think, it kind of exposes the essence of what it's like to be a part of Gideon's Promise. And so we're going to show you that clip. And then Illy is going to explain to you how this 3-year program works. And then we'll ask Genesis and Kate to share with you some thoughts as graduates or members of the program. Okay? So bear with me while I figure this out. Here we go.
In 2007, we started the Southern Public Defender Training Center. The idea was that we could identify some of the best young lawyers from all over the country to come to offices in the South where the challenges were great and to attract them there with the promise of training. The one condition is that they promise to stay for 3 years, but that tends to be a constant struggle.
If you think you're attending a 2-week training program, you're wrong. This is your induction into a very special community, and it is your initiation into a very important movement.
In most of the southern states, the quality of legal representation for poor people accused of crime is an absolute scandal. The culture in many of these places is just moving people through the system, just need them, plead them, and send them on along the way.
Undoing the years and years and years of the culture where lawyers were judge-centered and prosecutor-centered is a real challenge that SBTC is trying to meet.
Once you know something that you think is unjust that's happening, and it's happening systemically, you have a duty, really, as a moral person, to try to do something about it.
Law school provides a foundation for how to think about legal issues, but in no way, shape, or form are you going to be prepared when you come out of law school. I don't care where you've gone to law school. Are you going to be prepared to handle 120 cases and handle them effectively as a public defender?
I would say almost no one is prepared to take another person's life in their hands and try a case coming out of law school.
For most of the public defender offices in the South, there was no training. Or if there was, it was very perfunctory or very superficial. And what John Rapping has done is now provide really in-depth training and training that goes on.
Now, I want you to think about what they actually get from the crime scene or the gun.
You gotta have a theory, right? The theory literally drives everything you do. It's gonna show that these guys are lazy, it's gonna show that they're not thoughtful, and it's gonna show that they're gonna put you in the position of having to make a decision about a man's life without doing the first thing to give you the tools you need to do it. That's offensive.
As a public defender, you are in a battle day in and day out. We know what's at stake, and so we push them.
She's never been in trouble before.
That's all I'm going to shut you down right there, because are you trying to go ahead with the sentencing hearing with your client not present? Is that what you're doing?
Your Honor,
That's what it seems like.
I just wanted to speak with you a moment while I'm here. and my client is not.
It provides a zone where attorneys can practice without a fear of being judged.
We have that tendency to beat ourselves up. We struggle with forgiving ourselves. And at this training, I really appreciated that RAP says it is okay. SPDTC, it has been so critical to my professional development. Were it not for SPDTC, I would have learned mistake after mistake after mistake, and at the expense of my client's liberty, really.
They're kids, they're grandkids who don't see them. Then we start talking about real pain. They're kids, they're grandkids who don't see them. Then we start talking about real pain.
If I didn't have June on my case, I think honestly I'd still be locked up. I think I actually would have served those years they was trying to give me. And I'm glad I had June to fight for me, you know, and actually see that there's an honest person in the system. I'm glad I met him. I'm glad, you know, they actually have people out there that care about the people that's behind bars.
I love that all my colleagues who went to SPDTC are all really using what we learned there. And so it's great to see other people telling stories and, you know, insisting on certain levels of practice.
You're going through this struggle and we are stripping away, you know, old ideas and showing another way of doing things.
As those people develop into leaders, as those people start running offices, as those people start being the voices in the state legislatures and the city councils and the local county commissions, we'll develop a community of advocates. And I think while certainly resources will always be an issue, if we don't start changing the culture with people who really understand indigent defense, I don't think we'll ever have meaningful reform.
It gives me hope that there can be a humane system at some point. It's not going to be overnight. But if these lawyers absorb this training and go out, and they have an influence of changing other people in their profession, I can see where this is a possibility.
It's took me a long time to actually come up with something about what makes me feel hopeful about this job. And it's always when I go to the public defender trainings, when I see the kids that are coming up behind me, when I see like the new crop, the new class, just to see them, you know, 50 people in the room, law school graduates who want to do this, and they really want to do it, and you can feel it. Yeah, it makes me hopeful. It feels great.
All right, so I'm going to turn it over to our executive director, Ilya Skia, who also helped found the program.
I'm also married to him. So,
so she's awesome.
He likes to say it, I don't. But anyway, I'm Illy. Everyone calls me Illy. They call him Rap. They call me Illy. But what I want to tell you about is the program and what it means to be part of Gideon's Promise. I know you heard them say Southern Public Defender Training Center. We changed our name in January because we feel like Gideon's Promise actually describes what we're doing. We're trying to fulfill the promise of Gideon versus Wainwright and giving people effective and quality counsel and giving them support and training through their years as a career public defender. And what our program does is we start off with an application process, what Alex and Scott told you about, and you'll be applying to the Harris County program project, but it's very similar in terms of what we're looking for. We're looking for committed folks who want to change the way things are going in the system right now. There are over 200 lawyers in our program, and they range from brand new folks, I'll call them newbies, who are right out of law school, to chief public defenders who understand the mission, the vision, and the values of what it means to represent the poor. And over the last 6 years, we're starting our 7th year with this organization, these folks have come together every 6 months. So for this group here, what you would do is apply to the program. We go through your application, you have a formal interview, and then you would join a community of public defenders with your class. We bring you in as an incoming class. Each year, because the demand is so high, we started off with just 16 public defenders from 2 offices, and we now have we've trained over 200 lawyers, and we have about 33 partner offices that go from as far northeast as Kentucky, as far west as Texas. We're so excited that we're getting more Texas folks. You come in as a class in August. For some of you, right after the bar, like the day after the bar. You will be tired, but I always tell the incoming class, you think you're tired now, you're going to be exhausted when you start this as a career. So we're just preparing you. You come in as an incoming class and you spend 2 weeks, 14 straight days, 12 to 14 hours of intense on your feet training. We make you get out of your comfort zone. We make you come from behind the table, the desk. There are no laptops, there are no Blackberries, there are no smartphones, and we make you work. And you will leave that program after 2 weeks, first of all, being excellent. You still have a long way to go, but you will be great. But you also, the most important thing is you will be introduced to people from all different parts of the country, folks who are in this fight to change the system, and they come and they support each other. And you will come in knowing they will all be strangers to you. You really don't want to bond. You don't want to room with them. You don't want to do these exercises that RAP and the faculty make you do. Everybody complains on day 1. But by the time you leave Birmingham, and I'm sure Genesis and Kate will tell you, you will feel like you've adopted a brand new family. And for people who are not on that touchy-feely, kumbaya, loving kind of thing, I know it sounds a lot, but I tell you, you will need that community to support you when you go back into the courthouse and you're getting your butts kicked. You're going to need that group. And so we meet every 6 months for 3 years. In between your face-to-face trainings, which in the summer 2-week program is in Birmingham, in January meet for the supplemental programs, which build on the foundations of public defense that you learn in that first 2 weeks. So then you go on for 6 months up to 3 years. In between those 6 months, we have a listserv. We keep in contact. We celebrate our successes. People have won. People have lost. I need some help with filing a motion. Do you have a brief or whatever? I'm not a lawyer. So brief on whatever. You got emotions on whatever that you need. And we communicate. I've had a hard day. I want to quit. Sometimes it's things that we get. And there will be community. I remember a couple of years ago, we had a lawyer, a new lawyer. She had been practicing for about 2 years. And she was experiencing tremendous burnout. And burnout is real in this profession. And one of the goals of Gideon's Promise is to help you figure out ways to manage your stress level and to keep you from getting burnout. But she was at the point where she wanted to quit. She even came to my house and said, "Illy, I need you to help me write my letter of my resignation." And she sent an email blast out to the entire community and said, "I cannot do this work anymore. It is just way too hard." Within 5 minutes, people from Minnesota, California, Tennessee, Texas, Georgia, all emailed this lawyer and said, "You can do it, stay in it, we're here to support you, what do you need?" And she ended up staying for about 2 more years. And that's the type of community that happens and it forms in Birmingham. And it stays that way. It happens all the time. So you come from Birmingham, you meet every 6 months for 3 years, and it's called our Core 101 program. And if you choose to continue with this program, and a lot of our graduates do, we graduate, we have this great ceremony, and you have the opportunity to apply to what's called our Graduate 201 program, where you learn to be mentors to new public defenders that you will be working with or interacting with as you become supervisors in your offices or in your areas. And so what it is it builds upon each other. And after 3 years of that, you do another 3 year of training. And hopefully the whole mission is, in order to change the system, we start from the grassroots level and we go up. And then you become the supervisors and the leaders that Rat talked about before to run offices and change things. And so the 3 year program, personally, I think it's a great program. I think that you will get a lot out of it. You will learn a lot. And the one thing I always emphasize to everyone is to keep an open mind. I think everything you learned in law school, and I'm sure every law school person will disagree with me, forget about it when you get to that program. It will teach you how to be an advocate. It will teach you the importance of listening to your client. The law, you can learn the law. It's a book, you memorize it. But talking to a person and listening to their stories is extremely important in this profession. Even though you know you have a bunch of other things that you need to do. You have 200 other clients that you need to talk to, but you need to listen to your clients and you need to go in there and fight because you are the last voice. You are the only voice before the state takes their freedom away. And it's so critical that you know that. And if what I'm saying to you scares you and you don't think you can do it, then you don't need to be in this room. It is a tough, tough job. But if you choose to do it, you will join a bunch of folks like me and Genesis and Kate that are still in it, that are still working hard and will support you. I'm trying to think what else I need to say about Core 101. I think that's about it. We work hard, we play hard. The one thing that I think is very critical, Alex mentioned about mentors that you will be paired with here in Harris County. After your 2-week training in Birmingham, we have faculty members that will serve as your mentor for your very first year. So you're going to take all this great stuff and you're going to learn it, and then you're going to go to the courthouse and try to throw it all at the courthouse. And they're going to say, kid, we don't do this here. We don't do this here. So what we do is we take our mentors and we match you up with a mentor for a year, and they will help you navigate some of the things that you learned into your system. There's a new lawyer that we had in her jurisdiction. They didn't file motions. And when she went into court her first time, she filed a motion. And all of the lawyers, you can file a motion, but we don't do this here. And all of the other lawyers, private and appointed counsel, snickered at her and laughed that she was filing motions. And the judge was like, what are you doing? We don't do that here. But every day she went back and she filed another motion and another motion. And finally a private lawyer said, can I get a copy of that motion? And then people in that courthouse start filing motions. And that was the one thing that changed the system, and it changed that courthouse. And now other lawyers were doing it. And that's the type of thing that had she not had a mentor to help her, it's okay, go ahead, I support you. Even her chief at the time was not very supportive of what she was doing. But because she had the backing of Gideon's promise, she had the courage to go and to do it. And that's what our organization is about. And now things are changing in that system, in that circuit because of that. But I want to say, if you have any questions, everything is on our website. You look on the Core 101, it's gideonspromise.org. It'll tell you about the different levels. It'll tell you where you can go if you decide to do this forever, and I hope you do. I think once you join this community, you can't help but to live and breathe it. And if you have any questions, I'm always available. You can email me and contact me. But I hope I see your applications. I hope you apply. And if you do have any questions, just let me know.
So let's ask Genesis and Kate to get up and tell you a little bit about sort of firsthand experience and what it did for them as young lawyers going through the program.
Come on, Mama.
She did not get pregnant.
My name is Genesis Draper. I am an assistant federal public defender here in Houston. I started originally in Nashville, Tennessee as a state public defender there, but I'm from Texas. So I started 2006, fresh out of law school at the public defender's office, loved it, great people, having a great time. And I knew inherently, I had interned earlier with DC, so that kind of gave me the notion that I wanted to do this work, so I just started doing it. And like I said, I was having a good time, having some mild success, I'm sure, but just was young, dumb, and out of control. So the office that I was in at the time, which a plug for the Nashville office, is an awesome office, if anybody's wondering. They had no training at the time, absolutely none. We didn't have staff meetings, we didn't have group meetings, trial meetings, send you off to training, in-house training, there just was no training. And I had heard about the Southern Public Defender Training Center, now Gideon's Promise, through one of the individuals who was in their first class. And he called and said, hey, you should do this. It's really good. I'm down here in New Orleans. Get involved, sign up, apply. And so I called Rap, told him where I was, and he said, sure, come on down. These are the parameters of the 2 weeks and every weekend after that. So I went to my boss and I told him about it. And he said, sounds good. Yeah, sure. I'll give you the time off, but I can't give you the money. So I'm like, okay, I don't make any money, so where am I going to get the money to do this training? Fortunately, there were sponsors out there and people who supported me and allowed me to be able to do this. And so in, was it 2007 or 8? 2008, I went to Birmingham and I started the program. And it completely changed my practice. I mean, completely changed my practice. It really highlighted a lot of the deficiencies in my practice, which primarily consisted of not being familiar enough with my clients, which was so much a part of the job and so much a part of me being effectively able to represent them. How do you represent someone you don't know? How do you represent, a person that you don't know where they come from, you don't know what led them to this situation? And so it really turned things around for me. So not even just skills and things like that I desperately needed. I needed a whole new way of thinking. And so I completed the program. I tell people all the time, during the 2 weeks that I was there, I lost the person who gave me a chance in this job. My boss, who said go ahead on down, was killed in a motorcycle accident suddenly while I was at the training. And I was devastated, and I left to go back to Nashville to be with the people in my office, and Rap said, come back. I was thinking, dude, I'm not coming back. I'm like, I don't know what's going on in my office. I don't know who my boss is going to be. He said, come back. Come back, go home, take care of home, and come back. People want you to come back. So I went down for a day, and I came back, and the family there, that's just what it was. The family at Gideon's Promise totally supported me through that. It was difficult, but they all encouraged me, keep at it, reminded me of why, he sent me there and the faith that he had in me to give me the job. And so I say all that to say that we've all had our ups and downs in the profession, whether it's, we've lost a trial, we've lost a coworker, lost our marriage, whatever the case is going to be, this family is there to support it. And so it is literally a family. I will just say that if you're thinking about getting into this work, you're sitting there wondering, is public defense for me, is indigent defense for me, is criminal defense for me? I would maintain that you cannot do it effectively the way it's supposed to be done, the way it was designed to be done after the Gideon v. Wainwright decision, if you do not have this type of community. You won't. You won't. I had to miss the winter session. Clearly I'm like pregnant, so I had all these new things going on. So I had to miss the winter session. So I haven't seen them since June. And I can feel the deficiencies. I can feel some things that start to slip. And you need that encouragement. You need to constantly be able to call on these people. I go to trial on Monday on a gun charge. The last couple of weeks I've been emailing and texting, people from the program, hey, I'm thinking about this, what do you think? I'm trying to come up with my voir dire. What are some issues that I need to be thinking about? What do you think about this issue that I'm focusing on? They text me right away. Text me back right away, call me right away. I'm getting emails from people in Gideon's Promise. I don't know Kate because we came through at different times. I was getting emails from people that I didn't even know were in the program. And so they started asking me questions about my case. I'm responding back. We're going back and forth about different ideas. And before you know it, they helped me to shape, the theory and the theme and the picture of my case. And so you cannot do it. You won't be able to do it because you will start to get jaded, and it will slowly chip away at the way in which you treat clients, the way you deal with clients. It'll definitely make a difference. I work in a very amazing office with very smart, capable lawyers. But even with that, I get constant snickers and that doesn't make sense. Why are you doing that? That won't work. And then it does. Or if it doesn't work, I looked so good doing it that you really can't criticize. And so, you know, you just kind of have to forge your own way. But if you don't have this type of support, if you don't have this type of training, if you're not confident in your skills, you won't be able to do it. You won't be able to stand in federal court where everybody there has been practicing longer than you've been alive and say, you know, no, you're wrong. That's wrong. Most recently, I was in what we call mag duty, so where all the new cases come in. And there was a client, not even a client, a person that was charged with an offense that we could not represent because there was a conflict. So I had been told ahead of time that there was a conflict. So he gets up by himself, and the way that it usually works is that the judge says, the public defender's office can't represent you, but I will get you a lawyer, and they'll come and see you. Who knows when that's going to be, but they'll come and see you. But this was an out-of-district case. And so the way it works is if you get arrested in Houston, but your case is technically in Mississippi, you have the right to a detention hearing here. You have a right to an identity hearing. So you can challenge whether or not you need to remain in jail. You can challenge whether or not you're even the person they're looking for. And the judge said, so that lawyer will come and see you. Oh, wait, this is an out-of-district case. So I'm going to sign the order for you to go to wherever, you know, Mississippi, and I'll order that you get there within 2 weeks. And the person said, okay. And so I was sitting there thinking to myself, I'm half in my own world, doing my own thing, and just listening out the side. And so I said, oh, well, I'm sorry. I'm not sure if I heard the whole thing. I may have missed when Your Honor told him about his option for a detention hearing. And the judge said, he doesn't have a right to a detention hearing. This is an out-of-district case. And then the prosecutor said, yeah, like, don't you know that this is an out-of-district case? He doesn't have a right to a detention hearing. So I'm like, looking through my papers to make sure that I'm reading right. This person has an out-of-district case. They're charged with this. This is their first appearance. And so I said, no, he has a right to a detention hearing here in the place where he's arrested, and a right to an identity hearing here. I realize I don't represent him, but clearly he doesn't know that for himself, so I just wanted to remind the court. And so the court moved on, said no, it moved on. We're sitting there, other cases are coming up an hour later, the judge says, can I see the prosecutor in the back? I'm like, does this have to do with my case? What are they talking about? You know, I'm wanting to make sure that there's no ex parte communication going on. And the prosecutor comes back out and said, oh yeah, it looks like he can have detention here if he wants. Yeah, I don't know that. Maybe that's changed. I haven't been over here in Mag Court so long, you know. So maybe that's changed. I'm usually over in like this big important section. So I'm like, oh, okay, yeah, no, I don't think it's changed. But glad that you guys were, you know, able to work that out. And so, you know, now this guy knows that he can challenge it here. He doesn't have to sit in Houston for 2 weeks and then deal with it in Mississippi. So just little things like that will happen in your practice on a daily basis. And then you have the big moments where there's a lot at stake, and sometimes you lose, sometimes you win, but you need this community through it all, win or lose. So I would encourage anybody who is considering doing this work to put everything you have into applying for this program. It's very competitive, much more competitive than when I came through, and you could just call and say, I want to come. So it's changed, but it's totally worth it. If you have any questions about it, anybody can contact me. I can give you my information, let you know what my practice is like now, what it was like then, my participation in the program. My baby's coming in May 25th. The session is in July. I've been spending the last week trying to convince my husband, my baby will be 2 months. I can just take him to Birmingham and stay a few days. I'm not even working. So I can be there the whole week.
We'll get him there.
So it's just that important to me. Like, my baby will be 2 months, and then we'll just go to Birmingham and we'll just stay a whole week because I'm off work anyway. So that's just how important it is. So I really hope that you guys apply. Good luck to you, and I hope to see you in the
So I got to Birmingham, Alabama in August of 2011. And about 2 hours into the training, I thought, no, I'm not. It wasn't the kumbaya part that got to me, it was the sharing. And I was like, you know, I don't know these people. I've never met them. I was the only person from Texas in my class. And everyone's talking, all the trainers and Rap and Illy are talking about how we're all going to share share our stories so that in doing so we can learn to, tell our client stories and advocate for our clients, and we're all going to cry, and it's going to be this amazing cathartic experience. And I thought to myself, well, I'm not from the South. I come from a long line of really reserved New Englanders, and I'm just not going to do that with a bunch of people I don't know. But I thought, well, I really need this training because I had no training when I started off as a public defender. I went from law school in San Francisco to a small county in South Texas, just north of Brownsville. So small county, Willacy County in Texas. It was myself and one other attorney who had been doing criminal defense work for years and years and years, as had his father before him, and I didn't know what I was doing. So I thought, okay, well, I'll stick it out in Alabama a little bit longer because I need to figure this out because I think this is what I want to do, but I don't know how to do it. And so the sharing started, but I was okay listening for a while, and it was great. People were, telling their really personal stories and shedding tears, and I was shedding the occasional tear after day 4, day 5, but I certainly wasn't going to get up there myself. And it took about a week, and I did, and I shared, and I can honestly say that there are things that my Gideon's Promise class knows about me as a person that my closest friends don't know. And there are things my Gideon's Promise classmates understand about me and the work I do and why I do it that not only my closest friends, but my husband and my family will never understand. They can respect, but they don't fully understand it the way my classmates in Alabama do, because we're all in it together. We're all committed to doing this incredibly difficult work in indigent defense. I don't think I've ever been a part of such an amazing community, and I look forward every 6 months to recharging my batteries and to being around people who care about this work as much as I do, and who are committed to doing it better and better every year. I'm inspired by the people I get to see every 6 months, and it's what keeps me going. And when I come back from training in Alabama, I feel like I'm not only a better public defender, but I'm a better person. I care about it that much. So a little bit about me. So I started off in rural South Texas, and I was a public defender there for about 3 years. Recently, about 2 years ago, I moved to Austin, and I started doing post-conviction capital work in an office in Austin. And the lessons I learned about filing motions and court appearances, their applicability to what I do now has changed, but their fundamental values that I learned in Alabama haven't changed and will carry through my entire career as a public defender. The value of listening to your client and connecting with people on a human level. And I guess what I would leave you with is that not only I feel incredibly proud to be a public defender, but I feel even prouder to be part of the Gideon's Promise community. And I drove from Austin this morning, and Rob thanked me for that, and I thought, well, I would have driven from El Paso. I would just do that because I care that much about this program. So I have some cards. I'd be happy to talk to anyone about my experiences with Gideon's Promise. I almost guarantee you that if you come to it with an open heart and an open mind, that it will change your life and your practice of law, and fundamentally, the kind of person you are and how you relate to the world, because indigent defense is a huge issue for a long time, and it's a really exciting movement and community to be a part of. So, thank you.
Yeah, let's do that. Okay, that's the program. I'm sure it raises a lot of questions. So you may have questions about Gideon's Promise that Rap or Illy can answer, or our office is involved in it. I mean, some of these details are going to be hashed out over time, but it's got a pretty good picture today. So if you have questions for any of us.
I guess I have a question. So how big is the class? It sounds like this is growing like a lot every year. So how big is the entering class going to be this year?
So we're quickly outgrowing our space. We use a university, Stanford University in Birmingham. This year's class for the entire group is 52. From Harris County's, I think you do 10 this year and 10 next year. However, you know, if you don't make it in the 10 in the Harris County, you still have the opportunity to apply to the program. And we typically, over time, have gotten between 70 to 100 applications a year for the Core 101 program. So 52.
It used to be 24.
It used to be 24.
And then we kept saying, we can't turn this person down. They're awesome.
John kept saying that. No, it used to be 24. We thought the whole idea was that if we had a small classes, you got a lot of 3 to 1. So it was really 3 students to 1 faculty member. And we always work in small groups. So you may learn a concept, large group, and then we break you up into workshops to smaller groups. And that's how you train for the 2 weeks, so that you get a lot of feedback, a lot of on your feet training. But over time the demand has grown, and even I suspect even this year's class, I'm sure RAP is going to call me and say, hey Ellie, can we put 8 more people in the program? And I'll try to find a way to make it happen. But right now,
although even I have my limit, because one thing that I think both Genesis and Kate really emphasize that is important is that we really want to make sure y'all are bonding as a community. Because I'm going to tell you, when you start doing this work, you are going to have, as Kate said, you'll have your family members say, how can you represent those people? Or they'll respect it, but they won't really understand it. And it really is important for us to give you a community of people who just understand really deeply what you're struggling with every single day. Right? And so, you know, you could, at some point, it's too big that you can't really build that bond. But I think we did it with 52. So
we did it with 52 last year, and that was our largest class ever. And we survived, so it was good, with 52.
My question is, with the Harris County, you said that you were going to be mentors from Harris County. How is that going to incorporate into the program?
Well, as Illy explained, you'll have mentors through their program, but we want people here on the ground that know the Harris County practice that you can go to on a regular basis. So they're not going to make a great deal of money on this, but we're giving them a stipend to defray any costs they have and to make sure they give you the adequate attention you need. But you know, you need to be able to go to somebody, whatever, when you have a question about a particular judge, you know, practice, how things are done here, and so that's why we make this.
I was just curious how that was going to be incorporated into,
well,
if there was a structure for that. Yeah.
This is the core of it. You're going to learn, most of the training is going to be through Gideon's Promise. But when you're back in Harris County, you're going to have someone through whom you're going to learn the local procedures. There's going to be a lot of hoops you got to jump through to make sure you understand every part of the process. You know, no Texas law.
You know, I sometimes talk about the program as we kind of, it's like if you were on a football team. I see it as we teach you to run, to pass, to tackle, to block, but every team in the league has a different playbook. So you come to Harris County, there's a different set of procedures, right? Genesis had her people in her office she would go to when she had a Nashville-specific question. Our mentors tend to be much broader in the sense that it's a very informal thing. You might call them because you're having a difficult time at home. I mean, they might be that close to you. It might be you're just brainstorming a case, but when you're thinking about the actual procedure, you've got someone on the ground who knows that courthouse, who knows the judge, who can really walk you through it, and that's what the Harris County mentorship is really going to add to it.
And we'll make sure we're working with people that don't have a perspective that's different, that you're not getting 2 different messages. And you know, from the better, more experienced criminal defense lawyers, my experience is they believe in this kind of stuff. They didn't get it when they were starting because it didn't exist. But that ultimately, if you've been doing this a long time, those concepts are the concepts that you embrace.
I have two questions. I want to thank y'all for coming here. It's a great presentation. Something I'm definitely interested in. My first question goes to Gideon and Travis. Can you tell me some of the core areas that will be covered in your curriculum over the next, I guess, 2 weeks program first and then follow up?
So we have a 2-week program that in every session builds on the last session. So it starts with a session on the role of the public defender, where you really examine what our role is vis-a-vis our client, what our role is vis-a-vis the system, right? And we do a lot of work on sort of who you are as a public defender. We then start working on client relations and how you build on that with the client and that sort of thing. We have a client-centered model, and we think a lot about how you can be a client-centered lawyer. We then get into pretrial practice, and we get into bond hearings, investigation, preliminary hearings, motions practice, Brady, discovery. But you're learning all of that in the context of a case. So you get a case, and every session, if you're learning Brady, you'll have a presentation on Brady, and then you're going to go to workshops where you're dealing with Brady in the context of the case that you now have. And then that probably takes us through about the first 8 days. Then you start brainstorming the theory of the case, and you get into the trial practice piece, where now you're trying the case, and you're learning voir dire, openings, closings, directs, crosses, based on what you've done with the pretrial stuff up until now. So I see it as 3 components. The first component is the lawyer and the client, what it means to be a lawyer, what it means to relate to a client. The second is pretrial, and the third is trial advocacy, with a strong infusion of values all the way through.
Then my second question for you, sir. You said after you go through the training that you would then recommend us to be judges in Harris County, just like taking on cases. What process during the training do we actually get that recommendation? Do we have to finish all 3 years? Is it the first year?
I wouldn't see it. I don't think that's a 3-year thing. I think at that point, this program will be a follow-up and will hopefully benefit you in doing that work. I think probably after even the first year, we could go to the judges and start talking about that. Now, I mean, part of what you're going to be, some of the duties that you'll have when you're back here in Harris County is gaining those skills that we think would impress the judges to take them on, because they do have a very high criteria now, and if you just got out of law school, you're not going to meet them. So it's almost a chicken and egg thing, okay? I can't go to the judge today and say, I've met this young man, I know when he completes this program, he's going to be ready to take cases, and we're going to be at a mentor. They'll say, well, we want to wait and see. We'll get to that point later. So what I'm telling you is, I think that will work, and I think after, you get through about a year, then we can start taking a shot at that. But as I said, it's not something I can go and get a vote on from all the judges and say, yeah, we're going to change our criteria, because someday in the future these folks may get used. So the real benefit is you're for free. You're getting a really great training. So even if everything doesn't work at the end of this, you all have gotten something great for nothing. Okay? And all we really want is your commitment that you'll try and want to do individual things.
And understand this, it's going to work, because what we deal with all the time, we work in systems where they don't always work the way they need to work. And what we do is we think, where do we want to get to, and how can we get there? And we try to tailor-make our program to get us where we need to go. And I think what Alex and Scott, what they're really recognizing is they want to get folks like you getting assigned counsel cases. There's a hurdle, a 3-year hurdle. And Alex wants to figure out, how can I get around that? And the program is a way that we can start trying to think about how to get around that. And I think, while there's not a plan right now, right, we're all committed to figuring out how together we can get you the preparation you need, and Alex can sell it to start getting you around this hurdle. And I just believe where there's a will, there's a way.
I have a question, it's a silly one, but admission into the program is not contingent upon being employed or not employed after graduation, so that's not a factor.
Not at all. Okay. But it's a consideration for you.
Okay.
Because we're not paying you to do anything. All we're doing is alleviating the cost of training. So you have to think, okay, well, what am I going to, what am I likely to be doing? Will I be able to go this summer? Or am I taking a job somewhere where they're not going to let me go, kind of thing. So those are considerations, but it's certainly not
requirement.
And let me just say something on that because the 2-week session is mandatory. Like you cannot do the supplemental sessions that follow, which are just weekend trainings, if you don't do the foundation piece first. And so we've had that with some jurisdictions when we first started that they thought, oh, we'll just come, 6 months from now. And you have to do 2 weeks, and you have to do the complete 2 weeks, which is one of the reasons why even in that traumatic time for Genesis, they came back. We didn't say you had to come back, but they wanted to come back because they knew how important it was. So I always tell folks, it's on the calendar, it's on our website. These are the dates, they don't change. And absent an emergency, you have to complete that first part in order to understand what happens to the second part, because all of the sessions build upon each other. So if you don't get part 1, you're not going to understand 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6.
And likewise, what you can't do is you can't come for the 2 weeks and then say, I don't want to come subsequently. I mean, of course, it happens, but we need to believe that you all are coming into this committed to going through the 3-year program and being present at every session. If an emergency comes up midway through, we get that. We can talk about it. But not only not coming to the 2 weeks, I mean, we are really strict about you need to be there on time. Don't think if we start the banquet Saturday night, you're going to show up Sunday morning. It'll be a hard first couple of days for you if you do that. Like it's like coming to spring practice late. Right? We've had people who have said, I've got a wedding. Can I leave a day early because I have a wedding? And we've said, no, but you can apply next year. Right? We get that you have commitments, and you've got to figure out which is a greater commitment. But we take this community really seriously, and if everyone can come and go when they have something they think is important, we can't do the bonding. So it's critical that you are present the entire time.
And just think about when you're in high school, you come in as a class, you graduate as a class, your classmates depend on you. So, they recognize your absence. Like as soon as we get that first meeting and all of us are in the room, it's 150 of us, but where's Genesis? And we're like, she had a trial that started, like she said 6 months in advance, like this was going on, but they reckon because they feed off of each other. And so that's why it's so crucial that it's not just about you anymore, it's a whole group that depends on you.
And for those who have questions about like how this is going to shape up, and I don't get it, so how will I be able to get on the appointed list and things like that? RAP says it will work. It will work because what will happen is you'll go and you'll get this training, and you'll be able to come back and let's say you're still unemployed or whatever. You have the opportunity you can sit second chair with other attorneys. There are attorneys that will allow you to sit second chair with them. You're a licensed attorney, and they'll let you do that. You have these type of skills that you gain. You will be heads and shoulders over people that have been doing this for a very long time. And it'll be a lot easier for Mr. Vernon and everybody else to then say, you've seen some people that have been through this program. You know the difference. They, need to be led into this appointed system. It will be easy to tell that you have been trained, that you are committed, and that you are serious, and to be taken serious. And so, regardless, like I said, you will come away from this training, you will be employed, because I came here to Texas with no job after having gotten married, no public defender system up. So I'm like, what am I going to do? What am I going to do? I can't get into, they're trying to say I can't get into this appointed system I've been practicing all this time. But I was locked out. But it was not long at all until I was able to approach certain people and quickly distinguish myself as someone who was serious and committed to this work and had invested in this work. And the few little spots that come up, which at the time were 7 trial attorney positions that never roll around, I was able to get one of those. And so it will work itself out for those of you who are wondering what the end game will be.
You really want to do it, you can do it. I did it, and I had no support.